Hello, Tailoring Talkers, and welcome back to the show that has you dropping in for the threads, but often leaving with something unexpected. It's Roberto, Revilla, your host here. And I've been away for a little while. It was longer than expected, but we hit episode 100, I think back at the beginning of April, end of March. And then I promptly exploded, blew the engine, burnt out, whatever you want to call it. So I'm really sorry that I've had a bit longer than I was anticipating off, but I'm recharged, ready to go. I've still been recording over the last few weeks, so there's a lot in the stack coming your way. But I'm really pleased to get this episode out and kick the new season off. It's kind of the Bondathon. We did discuss doing Never Say Never Again, which was the unofficial Bond movie. In the end, Jon, Alex and I recorded, I think it was sometime toward the end of March, actually. But yeah, tune in or stay tuned to find out what we thought of that film. Here's our review. So that's myself, Jon and Alex reviewing Never Say Never Again. Welcome back to Tailoring Talk. Thank you so much for hanging in there and waiting for me to get my butt in gear and start recording again. I really appreciate you all. Here's our review of Never Say Never Again.
Sean Connery is James Bond, Agent 007. Never say never again.
My name's Bond.
Oh, you're Mr. Bond. I believe I'm having you in half an hour.
Oh, splendid. Your room or mine?
Heavy, Mr. Bond?
You're marvelously well equipped.
Thank you, James. So are you.
Good to see you, Mr. Bond. Things have been awfully dull round here. I hope we're going to have some gratuitous sex and violence.
I certainly hope so, too.
Bond, the game is over.
Sean Connery is Ian Fleming's James Bond in Never Say Never Again.
So we did decide to include Never Say Never Again in our Bondathon. I started watching it yesterday. Carolina checked out after 20 minutes, and so I continued watching it to and from work today on the tube on my iPhone, which is not really the ideal way to watch any film in my book, but needs must and all of that. Before I tell you what I thought of it, so I'd never seen the film before. I'd seen about 60 seconds, which was the bit towards the end when Connery's tied up in the thing with the vultures. But other than that, I'd never seen it. I thought it was like a cheap knockoff of James Bond, a parody. So it wasn't one that really interested me because, again, you know, it's obviously not part of the canon, as it were. How about you, Alex? Had you seen this before?
No, I'd not seen it before. So it's the first time I watched it.
Yeah.
Now, there are a lot of flaws with it, but I actually quite liked it. So yeah. I think it was one of those things that I went in with low expectations, and it actually delivered against those low expectations, and better than some other Bonds. It wasn't the best Bond in any way whatsoever, but it didn't try to be, and that's what I quite liked about it. Is there was a kind of a knowing that it wasn't. It was kind of a bit of an alternative, and that was quite nice.
Yeah, Jon.
You know what? I think I prefer this to Octopussy.
Yeah, I know, but I'm glad you said that.
I actually really enjoyed it. My wife has asked me to pass on her comments and we may approach that at some point. But I thought it was really well paced. I thought it was actually there was less kind of dead air. It was just a bit more punchy and lots going on. And I watched it on a big screen in 4K, so I think I watched it in a better way than you, Bobby. But I really enjoyed it, actually, despite Connery looking a little bit ropey. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I watched it in 4K because I bought the Apple version, the iTunes version. But as I say, we watched like it must have been like the first 45 minutes or so on the telly yesterday. And then I had to resume on my iPhone. Right. So I did like half an hour on the way to work, half an hour on the way back. And then the last half an hour, about an hour before coming on here.
Right. So it's fresh in your mind.
Which is kind of a shame to what, because like I totally agree with you. I was pleasantly surprised because through it, about a third of the way through, do you know what it was? It was after the motorbike sequence. And I thought to myself, I think I actually preferred this of the two 1983 Bonds. I actually preferred it to Octopussy. And overall as a film, I actually really enjoyed it. Now, obviously, when we get to the end of this, we will give our ratings as we normally do. And I think we'll be inserting this one into our list overall. If you imagine this film, the original soundtrack removed, and then a John Barry score edited in, suddenly it becomes, I'm not going to give my score away, but it goes up a couple points for me. Because if you take the soundtrack out, because the soundtrack was pathetic, it was so jaunty, and it just didn't match the action that was going on the screen. So, you have this, they don't have the normal Bond opening sequence. They can't do the gun barrel thing because of copyright, presumably, and all that sort of stuff. So the sort of graphic comes up, 007, 007, 007 all joined together, and then we go into that sort of opening action sequence, which we later find out is John Bond. It's because
Bond. John Bond.
That was really good, John. I've spent way too much time with John in the last few days. But yes, John Bond is doing a field test. To see if he's actually fit to go back into active service or not.
Apparently James Bond can throw grenades around corners and long distances as well. I was quite impressed with that.
I know. He's got that sort of magic flick of the wrist.
Yep.
But the music through that opening sequence, that's probably what put Carolina off straight away, because she's like, what the hell is this nonsense? Because it sounded like, the music from the Love Boat or something during this, sort of commando-esque action sequence. But that was probably the biggest flaw, I think, with this film, because other than that, we had a great director, because they brought Erwin Kershner in, who's, directed one of our favorite Star Wars movies of all time, The Empire Strikes Back. Richard Gore, if you're listening. And you had Max von Sydow as Blofeld, which was a bit weird because he was in a herringbone suit with lots of hair and a sort of beardy thing. Not the Blofeld that we sort of know and love. And then Largo, the Austrian actor that played him, actually was an actor who had a lot of gravitas, because Connery basically recommended him for the part, having seen him in some European art house film, some sort of political thing. I can't remember what it was called. Kim Basinger, who was kind of relatively unknown at the time. Her
This
bra.
was a big break, wasn't it? Was this film her big break?
This was her big break, yeah. Her bra was not hired. They only wanted Kim, not her set of bras.
There was no need for that. It was spandex all the way in the 80s.
Yeah, but there was no bra whatsoever. I don't think she wore a bra once in this film, like ever. And as a result, I know she was Domino, but I don't remember anything else because it was very distracting. But then suddenly, so this throws another spanner in the works, guys, right? Because does this throw a spanner in your ranking of Bond girls now?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
it
we discussed the massage table scene at some point.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But we'll come to that in a second. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I thought she was a more alluring Bond girl than the Octopussy Bond girl. Well, I can't remember her name now, the actress, sadly. And she's the second American Bond girl, isn't she?
Maud.
Technically, but unofficially.
Yeah, that's right, because the last one was in Diamonds Are Forever.
Diamonds Forever, yeah.
Yeah. And then, I mean, there was actually just surprisingly lots of good things about it. So Barbara Carrera, who played Fatima
Blush.
Blush.
Good name. I wish I
she
thought that
seemed-
one in the last podcast.
Well, the thing is, right? Were you not thinking, or was it just me, that this was the blueprint for future Famke Janssen as
Yes,
Xenia
exactly.
on a top?
I had Famke Janssen vibes when she was in that black sort of Morticia outfit she wore up and down the stairs.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of her skills as a Bond villain was quick changing. She changed into different outfits really quickly. Like, she must have been giving the continuity guys a right old rough time in this film.
Yeah. So I might as well do a spoiler warning. We are going to be spoiling this film. I'm not going to use The Living Daylights because that's part of official Bond and this isn't. But we are going to be spoiling it. So if you've never seen Never Say Never Again, actually, we already recommend that you should go and check it out, even if you're skeptical. Bill is not here with us today because he was not interested. But I am. It's his birthday later this week, and I might see him this Easter weekend. So I will recommend that he watches it because it would be interesting to get his thoughts on it. So let's talk about the cast first of all. So Connery back as Bond. It wasn't jarring as jarring as I thought it would be because they set the story up really well that it was a Bond in his 50s.
Well, in his retirement, wasn't it? That's the whole point of that training exercise. At the beginning, there was sort of doing a psych test and a physical test to see if he was well enough to come back into service. And I think that's why he also went to the health clinic because he wasn't healthy enough as well.
Yeah,
they did set it up quite nicely. So they did kind of make it like we know he's old, but he's still got it.
Yeah,
and that was quite. It was actually quite endearing. It didn't feel fake, which was nice.
So this film came about. I should have talked about that actually, but we talked about this on the Thunderball episode because there were all sorts of rights issues going on because Kevin McClory had originally accused Ian Fleming of plagiarizing a story that he'd co-written with him or written with him. I don't know. I need to fact check myself. And then there were all sorts of rights issues and so on. And McClory finally got to make his Bond film with Connery's help because the original script was actually co-written by Connery. Funnily enough, I had some notes about what the original plot was, and it wasn't quite what we saw on screen in the end.
I thought this plot was a better plot to Thunderball than Thunderball's plot. It was more understandable.
Yeah,
kind of worked a bit more. It was more interesting, I thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it almost felt like a kind of simpler sort of spy movie, didn't it? There was some kind of Hitchcockian elements about it, and there were some Cockian elements. Cockian, sorry, that didn't work very well. But it was nice to see Connery back in the role, and I think he just reminded us all as to why so many people regard him as, being the best 007 ever. And I'm starting to come around to that way of thinking myself. So yeah, it was good to see him back. And also it was really good to see that they put some of the similar quirks that his younger version of Bond had. Aka the little sex pest.
Four bonks in this film. That's a high, I think. I think Roger Moore's only gone to max of 3, so Sean Connery's gone beyond Moore here. He's broken Moore's law, in fact.
And it was.
Oh, rest in peace, by the way. He died recently as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
Mr. Moore, not Connery. Sorry, Mr. Moore. Moore's law guy died last week, was it?
Roger Moore.
No. The gentleman that Moore's Law is based on, his law. Didn't he die this week? Sorry,
I don't know.
Complete tangent, but pretty sure about the transistor circuits doubling their power every 2 years. But
okay, maybe we could fact check that because we're recording for Play Pause Turn straight after this, and we'll talk about that on the Geek podcast rather than this one.
Okay, sorry, am I going? Am I kind of moving away from the cool here? Carry on.
Yeah, you are. You are.
Sorry.
There's lots of raised eyebrows at homes across the world right now. Okay, yeah, fine. Some computer dude died.
Okay. Anyway, so Connery's got his oats and he's saying them in this film quite.
Yeah, I know he totally is. And then as M, they had Edward Fox, who was really irritating.
Oh, I didn't like him.
Yeah, I did not like him at all. He was one of the low points for me.
What was with his accent?
Yeah, I know.
It went everywhere, and it wasn't particularly anything.
Not as bad as Rowan Atkinson's accent, though.
We haven't come on to him yet. That's
well,
hilarious.
I mean, so Rowan Atkinson did pop up as our man in Bermuda, didn't he? And he was there for comic relief. I mean, quite literally. But the villain of the piece, Max Largo, who was played by a guy called Klaus Maria Brandauer, I thought he was really good.
Yeah.
Really good. Like the scene with Kim Basinger when he gives her the Tears of Allah necklace. And then she says, "Oh, but what if I ever left you?" And he just, as he's walking out the door, he turns around to her and like draws his finger across his throat and says, "I would slit your throat."
Quite dark,
that
isn't it?
really unsettled me. And he was quite unsettling throughout. But he was really, really good. We just talked about Barbara Carrera's Fatima Blush. Now, she actually got I think it was a Golden Globe Award nomination for her part in this. And she lost out to somebody else. It might have been Cher, actually.
It was.
Yeah. There you go. And she was excellent, and she was a complete psychopath. She also gets the award for the best death of a Bond villain in the entire cinematic Bond history.
Is that following the stupidest monologue beforehand?
Following the stupidest monologue by any Bond villain in the entire...
I could kill you, but I'm going to get you to sign a document on crappy paper about how much you like bonking me.
Write it down. Yeah, write it down.
Write it down. Go on, in triplicate. What's that about?
And then Connery, sort of trying to make every excuse not to, like, oh, well, MI5 were not allowed to write down I wasn't even listening because I was just waiting for the pen
it was
to
pointless,
shoot
wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Max von Sydow adding a bit of gravitas as Blofeld, but wasn't really in it that much.
They cut loads of his footage, apparently. Loads of it. Which is a shame.
I can't see an acting credit for the cat, so I don't know if it's one of the same cats from before. Like the opening sequence of
I doubt
For Your Eyes Only. Yeah.
No, I think they had they don't have the rights for that, so they had to use a different cat.
Okay, fine. And it couldn't be pure white; it had to have a little bit of grey bits here and there, and so on.
Yeah.
Pamela Salem as Moneypenny. I thought she was good, wasn't she? She didn't have much to do, but
no,
there was no chemistry there.
No.
Not the same as between Connery and Lois Maxwell.
Yeah.
No. Not the same. One of cinema's great sort of tragic romances, that one.
Unrequited love, love affairs.
Yeah. Bernie Casey as Felix Leiter. Now, this was the first time a black actor had played Felix, and this was Sean Connery's recommendation.
I thought he was good.
Yeah, he was very good. He's the best Felix Leiter to date. It's probably the second best Felix Leiter after
Jeffrey Wright. Jeffrey Wright was really good.
Wright.
I thought he was really good too, and sad what happened to him.
Mm.
Oh, very. In what do you mean? What happened to him? Has he died as well?
No Time to Die.
Oh yeah, in that.
In the film,
he's not dead in real life, is
the
he?
character, not the actor. Jeffrey Wright's all right.
So the moral of so that was Sean Connery's recommendation, and his reasoning was that Felix Leiter in previous films had never been memorable. So he said we should cast an actor of color. I'm sure that's not how he said it. He probably said cast a black person, so that he'd be more memorable. Never mind the fact that the actor himself did a very, very good job with the role, I thought. Then we had the armorer, who in the credits is referred to as Q, but in the film he's called Algie.
Yeah,
and he was played by Alec McGowan.
He was really good.
Yeah, sort of moaning about budget cuts and all that sort of thing.
I think, yeah, that's the thing, because you couldn't actually get what's his name,
Desmond.
The
trouble is also you get the problem of certain actors being loyal to the Broccoli camp. I know that's why John Barry didn't do a soundtrack. So you've just got to be there. They had to deal with those kind of the different loyalties of the actors and the producers and so on. Yeah, I thought it was all right.
There was a lot of that. They couldn't get certain props guys. They couldn't get certain members of the stunt team. They approached a number of previous directors to take the helm of this movie, and they all said no because of loyalty to Cubby and to Eon as well. So yeah, they had to deal with a lot of that stuff. And I think they by and large got around those issues really, really well, because I think a lot of the stunts were done really well, apart from the one at the end with the horse.
Yeah.
So that was originally cut, that scene, from the UK TV version to the films.
I'm not surprised. Flipping luzzed the horse out the window.
Well, I think also after this film, that's when they started putting animals have been harmed to make this movie warnings on the film as well. Yeah, I don't know. Did the horse survive?
It did, yeah, because you saw when Bond then hides behind the boat as they continue to shoot at him, the horse kind of is swimming off. There's a little.
Is that the same horse? That's what I mean. Did the actual horse survive?
Well, I don't know, because it was done on a green screen, wasn't it? Because if you look at the horse and Connery and the other one coming out the window,
yeah, those bits are. But the bit where it lands in the water upside down.
I thought they used a model. I thought they
used a real horse for that.
Really?
I think so. Yeah. Which is why there was a little bit of, I think, distancing from. I think Connery was a little bit upset about that, from what I hear.
Yeah,
but
because the shark that they used for the sequence where he's exploring the boat and they put the radio transmitter. Blush puts the radio transmitter on his scuba tank, and then the shark keeps coming after him. Apparently, that was a real shark.
Well, yeah,
it looked bloody real.
Shut the door on the poor thing at one point, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, in that one where they shut the door and it looked like it kept ramming the door open, basically what they did is it was one take, shut the door, and then they took that clip and they kept moving it backwards and forwards.
They did a Tusken Raider with it, did they?
What?
The bit in Star Wars where the sound person attacks Luke and goes,
yeah,
they've just got one action and they looped it backwards and forwards to get the action. So they did the same thing.
Really?
Yeah.
I've seen that film like 500 times and I never knew that. Wow.
Anyway.
Yeah. So overall, the cast was pretty good. I would say out of that lot, the bum notes for me personally was Edward Fox.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. We know that the Fox family are a bunch of loons anyhow, apart from, the one that's in Silent Witness or... Yeah.
Amelia Fox. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when we were watching it, we were actually audibly saying, "Oh, for God's sake, Em, just shut up!" out to the TV.
Yeah.
Especially when he started to say, "Oh, what are you talking about some bloke with an eyeball?" Not trusting this renowned world-saving 00 agent he's had in the department for years. Just struck me as being a bit. Were they trying to push a character who was new to his role and was being a bit of an idiot, or were they? I don't know. I just couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, I don't know. It was such a weird sensation watching this, because you just went through such a range of emotions, and at one point I was thinking that there's some parallel universe where there's a this could have been like the multiverse version of Bond, where we had Moore and Connery's Bonds in the same movie. That would have been quite interesting. I was about to say cool, but it would have been quite interesting.
BCU.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about how the film looked and sets and so on. So they were back in Bermuda for a large portion of it. I thought overall it was actually it was a good looking film, and it was shot really well. Did you notice the framing?
Yeah, I think it had better production values than Octopussy, actually, in terms of its cinematography. Yeah.
Well, it had a higher production budget, didn't it? But I think also the director made a difference because, Kirshner was really ramming home that it's rule of thirds, right? Almost every single shot was like rule of thirds, rule of thirds, rule of thirds. But it all just looked really, really good. For the most part, it looked really clean as well. The restoration that we both saw, John, looked pretty stunning, actually.
The colours were nice. I mean, we commented on how nice the colours were for Octopussy. I think they did a similar job here. And obviously, we've watched the restoration when this was shown. I think the cinema would have been great, but the TV versions would have been a bit less nice to look at. So we're very lucky we can see it in the essentially almost as good as the original version. Very lucky. Did you watch it in 4K, Alex?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. It was good. It was a good presentation. I think the thing that lets it down were just some of the scenes. So I think if you took that out and, like you said, changed the soundtrack and a couple of the characters, but not many, you don't need to do a lot. I think everyone would have been like, "Wow, it's amazing Bond. It's really good." And so I think that's the thing. But yeah, I mean, I think it did all of the things it needed to do. So I think as a Bond, I think it still met its needs.
Yeah. So Alex, whilst you're talking, can I borrow you for your usual star segment and talk about gadgets? Because we had a few in here.
Yeah.
I don't have a great list today.
No,
there were quite a few though.
I think it was just the right amount of gadgets, wasn't it? It wasn't like too overloaded, and it wasn't too MacGuffin-y either. It was, I thought it was pretty cool. I like that motorbike.
You had the motorbike, you had the laser watch, which worked well. You also had the fountain pen, so that was a good one.
The rocket pen was cool.
Yeah. There was a few things. I love the game Domination.
Oh, yes, the Domination that was really good.
That was brilliant. Like it's very 80s, but
when that came up, my other half said, "Oh, that reminds me of Tron."
Yeah,
I'm just trying to think when Tron came out because I know Tron did pioneer all these new effects, and you start to see them appearing in films.
I'll tell you what it kind of reminded me of, though. It brought back memories of on the ZX Spectrum 128. There was a game. It was a Starfighter game. You used the joystick to play it, and it was vector graphics based.
Yeah,
but it was so addictive.
Tron came out in 1982. This film came out in 1983. So it's definitely someone somewhere has seen those graphics and thought, we can put that into a Bond film as a gadget.
It is of the age for sure.
I don't, but the actual game itself, but the graphics for that when it came up and then it switched sort of the wraparound 3D
hologram things.
The hologram, I thought it looked so good. Part of me wondered if Kirshner had borrowed some of his mates from The Empire Strikes Back over at Lucasfilm to help with all of that stuff, but it just looks so good. It looked clean, it looked crisp, it
held up.
What's really interesting
really held up.
If you think about the time itself, you'd have things like Space Invaders and Donkey Kong in arcades and bars, but a Monte Carlo casino would have been just the place to find such high-end, expensive, cutting-edge technology. And that's what I liked about it. Although it was ridiculous because you just don't have holograms, it was also believable, and the fact that it has these amazing sort of pain-giving electrodes on the joysticks was brilliant. I thought.
Yeah, I loved it. And I think the other thing that there was one that confused me, which was the missiles that they used to travel to the lair. to the second place where the second nuke was, that really threw me. I was just like, how are they doing that?
The Bell rocket belt.
That's
things.
it. Yeah.
They were
It
ridiculous.
completely
They were
threw
fun.
me because it was quite real. It was almost like it was absurd and realistic at the same time.
Well, there was
And I
no.
think
Where was the fuel?
I don't know. It didn't make any sense. But yeah, I thought it was hilarious. That's kind of all I had. I'm sure there were more.
You've got some more. So you've got
Go
the
on.
picnic. You've got the hidden picnic basket. You know, where he opens his suitcase up and he's got foie gras and.
Oh
vodka.
yes, quite right.
You've got Fatima's night vision, where she spots Bond spying on her and Jack Petici.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the iris recognition system that he brings in a suitcase to unlock.
Very true.
And I think you could also count the underwater vehicles that transports the bomb near the end of the film as gadgets as well, because they were kind of souped up and cool as well, weren't they?
Yeah, I almost felt like there was 2 films in this. There was quite a lot of storyline. It was, but comparing it to Octopussy was a lot simpler, or it felt a lot simpler than this. But yeah, so there was plenty to get excited about.
The chap who did all the underwater sequences for Thunderball did all the underwater sequences for this film as well.
Right. That makes sense.
And I think he learned from Thunderball because they were a lot more succinct, weren't they? We complained about them being a bit overlong.
Yeah,
they were just the right length to kind of bookend the scenes where you going into that kind of weird underwater fortress that had all those statues, which kind of didn't really mesh with the fact it was meant to be a Muslim, a Muslim temple when you'd never have such iconography in a Muslim temple. The whole Tears of Allah thing was a complete confusion for me because that kind of was at odds with how it all works with Islam. And anyway, that doesn't matter for this, does it really? I mean, I think in this day and age, you'd probably get someone somewhere giving them a fatwa for doing that, but at the time it seemed to be okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, Bobby.
No, don't apologise. This guy, I just, that's exactly what I wanted this to be, like a fireside chat about this piece of, again, because another emotion and another thought that crossed my mind is like, this is like Bond fan fiction.
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
it's just surreal watching it.
It is surreal, but it's still entertaining, and that's what's most important. The film should be entertaining. It was. Can we talk about? Because I promised my other half I mentioned this. Can we talk about the masseur scene?
Absolutely,
right. Because that's when Becca, my other half, checked out the film. She found that quite offensive. Not that he just went and started touching her up without consent, but the fact that the scene just lingered for so long on him rubbing her down to her bum several times. She just said it was a bit unnecessary. We get the point that Bond's being this, charming rogue who's kind of wormed his way into the massage parlor and is talking to her. And she gives the wry smile at the end of the scene so that everyone feels okay about it. But it was a bit classic Connery, wasn't it, really?
I don't think you would see the funny side if someone had just done that. And I think that was the problem. It's like it's not just a double standard. It's icky in lots of ways. And I think that was the thing. It's kind of, and she has her own problems. She's got plenty of issues.
Yeah.
So this doesn't like charm on top. This is making it worse.
Yeah. I mean, my first thoughts when that scene started were that is the worst massage in the history of massages. She asked for a hard, firm, and that he was barely tickling her. It was nonsense.
Well,
he's also standing sort of awkwardly, quite.
Well, it was kind of face to man appendage, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah. It was deliberately by the looks of it.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Whether they just wanted to like accent the curves of her body or whatever, but it didn't work. It just made you feel really weird about it.
Well, they wanted to show off her side boob, didn't they? That was obvious when they moved her arms and waggled them about and so on.
But you just put him behind,
waggling. Well, just yank her arms for a bit. For God's sake!
It wasn't. I think that's the problem. It's like it was the execution of it was so poor. Yeah. It was like the premise, like they obviously wrote it and went, this is going to be done really classy. It'd be really well done. And then it was just like, no, it wasn't classy at all.
or it was just the directors basically, they've hired this young up and coming actress and giving her a big break. And sorry to sound a bit sinister, but they were taking advantage is something that crossed my mind as well.
Kim Basinger is a very attractive lady in her time, still is. She would have been, I mean, I turned around to Becca and said, look, it's awful, but think of the demographic of the film at the time. It was mostly, men of a certain age, and it gets bums on seats, and it makes the millions back they spend on the film. So I can understand that, but yeah, you're right. I do feel sorry. And another thing I felt was this scene, the love scenes were much more gratuitous and less Bond than the normal. Kind of fun, slightly fun, flirty, kind of humorous. Yeah, exactly. And at one point, which one was it? Was it Fatima? I mean, she whopped them out. I mean, there was a nipple on camera, and you just think that's just not the Bond. It's just not the Bond way. Damn you! So it was a little bit like that's took me away from the Bond franchise a little bit.
Yeah,
bit crass.
Yeah,
not the Bond sort of lovemaking that we're used to. No champagne.
No magnetic watches pulling zips down humorously. Nothing like that. It's more sort of, wham bam, let's roll around for 10 minutes and watch the shit roll around with us,
Yeah.
Again, I think we were getting into that time of the 80s and late 70s where it kind of would have worked in another film. It was just because this was a Bond, this probably shouldn't have gone down that. But,
It's a tricky one because we know what Bond's like.
Yes.
And we know he does these things. And I just think that the this version of the story, they thought perhaps we can make it a bit more raunchy again, just to make a bit more money than Octopussy. I think that's what
came pretty close.
Yeah. Okay, Alex, what were the figures? Can you remind us?
So Octopussy grossed slightly more, 187 million to 160.
Yeah.
So it did win, and obviously it had a slightly higher budget. I can't remember, but if you look at Rotten Tomatoes, Never Say Never has the better score.
Oh,
so Never Say Never has 60%, whereas Octopussy has 42%, which is quite bad.
And by now, those figures should have settled out, shouldn't they? Really, pretty much.
Oh yeah.
It's actually quite well received. This quite well reviewed. There are various, sort of the authorities on, the order of the Bond films and all of that. And there's one of them in the 90s. He actually put this as his number 7. And I guess by the mid 90s, you probably would have been about 20 films in, maybe 18, 19 films in.
Yeah, that's right.
By that stage.
Well, this is 13.5, isn't it? Never Say Never Again, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's well, actually, before we go to our ratings, because I'm going to kind of wrap this little chat up, but John, what was your favourite bit of the film? What was your favourite sequence or scene, or your favourite part of it?
I really enjoyed the domination game in the casino. I thought that was proper Bond. That felt very, very Bond. And the two kind of main characters, the antagonist and the protagonist, sort of, at odds with each other. No one else is involved. It was just right down to the knuckles of these two. I really enjoyed that. And I quite enjoyed the car chase, the motorbike chase. That was quite good as well. That's the bit where my wife said, I'm going to sleep now as a car chase. She hates car chases. I love a car chase. You can't have a Bond film without a car chase. You got to tick that box.
Yeah.
So, and just in general, I thought it was quite a funny film. I laughed a lot more in this film in good ways than most. So that's that's going to all affect my score towards the end of the podcast.
Yeah. Alex?
I think I quite like the dance scene in the ship, when they put the music on and the thing that I quite liked, but I think that was the voyeur in me. Actually, I thought all of the time in the yacht was pretty impressive. Like it was just really well done. So I enjoyed that. And like John said, there's a lot to laugh about in this. sometimes you're laughing like
With
at it,
Yeah.
and then other times you're laughing with it, but it doesn't matter because you're still laughing, so it's okay. Some bits were very cringe, but then that's true of any Bond, so
The
it's
fight
fine.
scene with Count Lip, the Pat Roach from I think his own pet. That was weird without music, no dramatic music. It was just a quiet fight that kind of they brawled from room to room and trashed the joint. I thought that was weird.
Yeah,
and apparently again the TV UK TV version, they cut the bit where he falls forward with all the chest tubes sticking out of his back. And I bet you asked yourselves, well, why didn't that happen to Bond when he went through exactly the same like shelves with glass on them?
Yeah,
he's a lucky chap, isn't he?
It's a continuity error because all of those test tubes and bottles were stood upright on the shelf behind him. So for him to have ended up with them all stuck in his back, it just wouldn't happen, basically. But anyway, that wasn't the only flaw in this film. There was so many. But, for me,
that's not the one to pick.
No, you're right.
I think of a lot of Barbara Carrera's stuff was a favourite for me because it just reminded me so much of Xenia Onatopp, Famke Janssen's
such a good name,
Femme Fatale from GoldenEye, who's one of my favourite Bond girl villains of all time. I just think she was weirdly brilliant in that film. But definitely that motorbike chase, and then the outcome of it when he gets, when he totally blows her up, it's just her smoking heels left. I just
smoking
thought,
high heels was hilarious. I laughed at that. That made me laugh.
Yeah, because I didn't know what the pen was going to do because it kind of hit her and then it's fizzing and you're like, oh, okay. And then she starts laughing and points the guns at him, and I'm thinking, oh, crap, that didn't work, did it? Bring back Desmond Llewellyn's cue. And then all of a sudden she just explodes into a fireball. And I at that point, because I was watching that when I was on the tube home, I took a screenshot so I wouldn't lose the time marker of that scene because Carolina loves an exploding baddie. Ever since she saw... Do you remember Arnold Schwarzenegger's comeback film where he was that sheriff in that town and that drug cartel guy basically comes blazing through? Did you see that film? I can't remember what it was called.
No.
It was about 10, 12 years ago. It was Arnie's comeback film after he stopped being governor of California. But there's one scene in that where one of the goodies basically fires a flare at one of the baddies and it hits the guy in the back. And there's a pause, and then the guy just explodes. And Carolina, we were in the cinema, and we were sat next to this elderly couple, and Carolina was peeing herself laughing. Everybody else was sort of like, oh my God, that was really violent. Carolina, no. It was like the funniest thing she'd ever seen in her life.
Yeah.
And ever since then, anyone who gets hit by something and then explodes, it's like her favourite thing. So I'm going to show that to her later. Onto, was there anything else that Becca said about the film, John? Before I go to ratings?
She did say she just hadn't realised really how Connery's Bond didn't age so well in terms of his kind of attitude towards women. Which is, even with, because this is his last film, and his last film kind of doesn't show any progress, does it really, in terms of how Bond is that's what her main concern was. And so she just said, I'll get back to you when you're in the Daniel Craig films. So we'll come to that.
Oh wow. So not even Brosnan.
No, not even Brosnan.
Oh my God.
Well, let's watch the Brosnan films and see what we think first, shall we? Again,
I guess so.
I haven't watched those films for a long time, and we may be surprised by those as well. So we'll have to see.
GoldenEye I know pretty much off by heart. Tomorrow Never Dies I know pretty much off by heart. The World Is Not Enough, one of my favourites. For reasons I've mentioned before with the CGI, my rigs, seeing it in the cinema. The only film that I've seen with my dad, Bond film that I've seen with my dad in the cinema. And then after that, it was the one with Halle Berry. Die Another
That's the first
Day,
Daniel Craig, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No,
I thought that was.
There was the Invisible Car one after The World Is Not Enough. That was his last one. Die Another Day, and and that was terrible. Anyway, so let's go to ratings. John.
You know what? I mean, it loses a few because of M, and I think I'm going to give it a 7, which is quite high. Because I actually, the pacing. The pacing was good. I enjoyed it. There were laughs. There was some good stunts and gadgets. There was there was eye candy, which you get in a Bond film. I just, I just really enjoyed it, and I think, but I can't give it a higher rating than 7 because it's not an official Bond film. I think it loses marks for that. It loses marks for M, and it loses marks for soundtrack. So I'm going to give it a 7, which is still quite high. If Phil was here, he'd be running around his room, banging his head against the wall,
turning in his grave.
Yeah,
turning
in his
in his Crystal Palace shirt.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah. So, John, let's go to Alex first, and then I'm going to ask you another ratings question. Right, Alex.
All right.
7.5.
Ooh.
Very, very solid. Actually, that's not quite the highest I've rated, but it's pretty close.
Sorry, I'm just putting that into the Bondathon ratings.
You've got to share this spreadsheet because
I know.
I'm not putting logic behind it. I'm just taking it on faith that I've done that. You'll be like, "Wow, it's the best one." I'll be like, "No, maybe I did."
Well, that's what's coming up, Alex. I think he's going to hold me to task for my rating now.
I think so.
Compare it to other films.
I think the only ones that are up to date might be mine. Yeah. Okay. So I was coalescing around a 7.5. Weirdly, and that again, I am so spaced out by this film. It is just so weird. But I've kind of surprised myself. Now, I gave Octopussy 6.5. So and I preferred this to Octopussy. So it had to have at least been a 7. So what else did I rate 7.5? Well, number 7 in my list is Live and Let Die with a 7.5. So the question I need to ask myself is, was this better than Live and Let Die? And actually, now, who did the soundtrack for Live and Let Die?
Paul McCartney.
Oh yeah, okay. So at the moment, I'm going to put it below Live and Let Die on goal difference. So this is my 8th favourite out of the 14 that we've seen so far. That's so weird.
That's quite high praise.
That is quite high, yeah. So that means I think this film is better than Thunderball.
Yeah, no, it is straight away. It is.
Okay, The Man with the Golden Gun. On Her Majesty's Secrets. On Her Majesty's. Diamonds Are Forever. Octopussy.
That was bizarre.
And For Your Eyes Only.
No, I think that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we could almost describe this as a return to form.
Yeah, for a series that never got going after this, because they were planning to do another 5 or 6 films with Connery in the role. Can you imagine they'd have had him playing Bond until he was in his mid-60s? Yeah.
0087. Yeah. Someone infiltrates the old people's home, and Bond has a chase sequence in a wheelchair. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
00 AP.
Yeah.
Now, Bond, these aren't just dentures. If you just take them and anyway. Right, now let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Right. So now this is our sort of parallel sliding doors moment rating. Imagine that film with 2 changes. Number 1, Edward Fox's M is dubbed over by someone who actually gives the part some gravitas, right? So let's say they do a modern audio version and they use Ralph Fiennes to dub the voice of Edward Fox. And then the second thing they do is they put a John Barry soundtrack score or even David Arnold score over this and wipe that crap out. Then what do you rate this film, John?
I'd probably give it an 8.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Alex?
I'd give it an 8 too. It'd probably be like 3rd or 4th in the list. So that would be a solid. Yeah.
See,
And that's
I-
overlooking a lot of the dodgy bits as well. But still,
I would sit down and watch this again, which I haven't thought about a couple of the recent Bonds.
Yeah. I
Why have we
would
seen this
ratchet.
less often?
I would give it an 8.5, which would make it my joint third favourite
you go.
alongside You Only Live Twice and The Spy Who Loved Me, which is so bizarre.
yeah, that is weird.
Yeah, there we go. I think that's it. I've got nothing else to say about this. I'm
Perhaps
looking forward.
It's lucky that it isn't an official Bond, then, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to now getting back to the camp of Roger Moore.
Due to a Kill. Due to a Kill's next, isn't it?
Due to a Kill is next, exactly. So thank you guys. We're gonna stay on our call because we are gonna be recording for Play Paul's turn. So if you've enjoyed hanging out with Alex and John and myself, do check out Play Paul's Turn. It's our other podcast where we talk about things that we've watched and played and read. And we are going to be talking about The Last of Us. So that episode will be out in the coming weeks. This one, I'll probably put it out sooner rather than later, actually. But I've had a lovely time discussing this film with you guys, and I was pleasantly surprised. So thank
It's
you.
nice, isn't it, to find out something's good.
Yeah, it was a very pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
We do love making these Bond-themed episodes, and we do appreciate you all for your support. For the comments, not just on social media, but the letters that I get. Receiving letters is actually so nice. So thank you so much. You can support the show by not just subscribing, but also leaving us a rating and review wherever your podcast listening vessel allows, and share episodes that you think might help or entertain other people. We will be back next month with A View to a Kill, and I'll be back with more tailoring talk in the coming weeks. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.